Okay, guys, welcome back to another episode of Rotten Reviews. On this episode, I take a look at the 1997 film Dante's Peak with Pierce Brosnan and Linda Hamilton. It is rotten. It has a tomato meter score of 26% and an audience score of 38%. Can I tell you again that it's rotten? In fact, I found this film as a disaster film laughable. I laughed out loud at parts of it towards the end. Some of it was so off, over the top, jumping the shark, that it almost seemed like a parody of itself. And I laughed out loud. So this could be one of those films that is so bad that it's good, but only in the final act of the movie. Now, my biggest complaint with this movie personally is that I timed it while watching, and this took 56 minutes of its runtime before anything actually happened involving the volcano exploding or the disaster part of the disaster movie actually happening. Literally 56 minutes into this. So, two-thirds of this was a long, boring, drawn out, kind of shallow love story between a widowed geologist character played by Pierce Brosnan and a mayor slash barista of a small Washington town played by Linda Hamilton. Now, Linda Hamilton's character was almost literally taken straight out of her same character in the first Terminator movie. She has the same clothes, same hairstyle, same dialogue, and plays the same exact type character, constantly late for meetings, always in a rush. In this case, she's different in that she has two small kids that supposedly keep her busy, aside from her being the mayor of the small town and being the barista or owner barista of a coffee shop. It's not clear whether she's the owner of the business or just works there. I'm assuming she was the owner, but the movie didn't give me enough info on that. So in any case, this had a feel for me like Linda Hamilton pulled out of her Terminator role from 1984. I know she was, different in Terminator 2 or T2, but this is like we can skip that and just take her straight out of her 1984 Terminator movie. It's very strange. In any case, the special effects in this movie hold up quite well, even for today in November of 2019. These effects looked great to me. They really did. So if this had a big budget, certainly it went into the effects, and the movie spent a lot of time showing you the mountain and, a lot of aerial shots of the mountain that looked beautiful. It took a lot of time showing you the pyroclastic parts of the eruption. But the rest of the movie was just a straight up bore, a snooze fest. All the characters were very shallowly created. In particular, the geology team that was backing up Pierce Brosnan's character, they were completely cardboard cutouts, throwaway characters that I didn't even know the names of them, except for one who died kind of pointlessly. I know his name was Paul, only because they yelled Paul several times while he died. It was completely pointless. This movie is just a disaster movie for the sake of showing a disaster, but it takes like 56 minutes to get to the actual disaster. Now, when it gets to the actual disaster, it's completely ridiculous. You have, for example, characters boating across a lake of acid and surviving, breathing inside a pyroclastic flow and surviving, and the funniest part of all, in my opinion, the character, Pierce Brosnan's character, actually drives a four-wheel drive truck over the top of a lava flow, and it takes him quite a while to do it, and it's supposed to be suspenseful and keep you in this, on the edge of your seat. But it's ridiculous, and it even features a rescue the dog moment like Independence Day had in the middle of all this action, and it's completely laughable, and I laughed out loud. And then later, after this truck literally drives through lava, and it's still driving for miles and miles afterwards like no problem. It is completely ridiculous and funny. It's like a parody of itself, but it continues from there for quite a while, and it actually wants you to take all of this seriously. Um, I don't know what to make of that. I think this was probably a financial disaster for whoever put this thing together. So anyway, let's get into the actual audience reviews and see actually who likes this thing in 2019 and likes it not in a funny way. Because I actually had fun laughing at this at the end. We have a 4-star review from October 23rd, 2019. Even though the dialogue and some scenes are cheap, the VFX still looks awesome today. Yes, I agree. The special effects on the volcano still look fantastic today. I don't know why they aged so well, but obviously they put the money there. As far as the number of stars, I'll give this 1 star just because a movie was made and people got paid, and I like the effects. I'll give them credit for that, and I laughed out loud, so I'm not offended by this movie. I saw this for the first time when it came out on cable, probably when it was a year old. I vaguely remembered it from then, and then for this review I watched it again on Netflix just like in the last hour, and I'm still kind of in a good mood over it because I laughed out loud. So it was enjoyable to me as a comedy. Um, we have another review from October 22nd, 4 stars. This has been one of my favorite disaster movies to watch on a slow day since it first came out. Yes, some parts are unrealistic, but that happens in literally every movie ever made. Well, no, this movie goes way over the top. Yeah, you can say certain things are unrealistic even in the beginning, like the actions of the geology team, how dumb they are. But no, when I felt like turning this off, I just found scenes like the driving across the lava and the grandmother character who wasn't well liked. She was like a grandmother-in-law, ex-grandmother-in-law, they told you. She was kind of unlikable, and sure enough, she died just where I kind of wished that she would, in the acidic water. And it was completely stupid the way she did it, and I laughed a little bit at that too. Yeah, it's priceless. 3 stars. It was okay. It was good seeing Linda Hamilton play opposite Pierce Brosnan. The science was poor. The main characters would have died once they got to Grandma's cabin from inhaling the ash. In order to enjoy this movie, you have to suspend a lot of disbelief. The ELF device was literally the Deus Ex Machina. Yeah, yeah, the snow. Well, I started thinking of it as snow because they treated the ash, I mean the thick ash that they were all trudging around in as though it was just a snowstorm, and the vehicles performed fine in it. No problems there. People were breathing just fine in it. They never even coughed once or twice. I mean, that's how ridiculous it was. Literally, it looked like snow too, that they tried to make look gray. But yeah, it was just a snow machine in most parts with gray colored snow, and it was completely ridiculous. When we say suspension of disbelief in a disaster movie, this just goes so far over the top of that. You've got to suspend your disbelief in so many ways that you laugh out loud. That's why I enjoyed this. 2 stars. The explosions were fun. Yeah, the explosions were fantastic, and it had a lot of explosions and cliched disaster movie type things going on when the disaster finally happened, you know, after 1 hour into the film. And they threw everything in the kitchen sink in there they could to try to convince you to take it serious, to be suspenseful, and it just made it into more of a parody. And literally everything the main character did, every step he took, put him in some improbable, you know, further disaster thing that would happen to him, and it was funny after a while. So it was beyond just suspension of disbelief in the normal sense. It took it way over the top. 3.5 stars. Maybe in 1997 it was a bad movie. In 2009 it seems it is a semi-good movie. Infinitely better than Star Wars Episode 8. The special effects in most cases were excellent. This is due to using real models and not relying on a town of Koreans doing CGI on their laptops. Pierce Brosnan is very good in the movie. So is Linda Hamilton. Well, you know, I'll pause there for a second. Linda Hamilton and Pierce Brosnan did their best to try to gin up some kind of contrived romance between the main characters. It was like a textbook disaster movie type romance, but it stretched on way too long. I mean, we got this for 1 hour before anything in the movie happened, and the kids that Linda Hamilton was a single mom, and they threw the kids in there as the foil to that, and they did it in also so cliched ways we've seen before, and the kids were just basically cartoon, cardboard cutouts of kids just designed to keep Linda Hamilton and Pierce Brosnan from sleeping together when that's what they wanted to do. It was completely cliched and pointless. And, I would have switched it off had I not known that, a disaster was finally going to happen. And when it did, it was worth sitting through that just for the laughs. I'm going to continue. Everyone else should have tossed their scripts and ad-libbed better lines. Even Scrappy or Scrunchy the dog, whatever his name was. Also, the stupid things people do that make no sense. Yeah, everybody does stupid things just for the sake of things needing to happen. Like, for example, this character, Paul, that is the mentor and teacher and authority over, Pierce Brosnan. He's the one keeping Pierce Brosnan from having the town evacuated much earlier than he felt like he should have done. He ends up dying for no reason, just by stupid, poor decisions, because he needed to die in a dramatic fashion where the director decided he needed to die. And a lot of people died like that, like the grandma character. She needed to die in that lake of acid, and it felt right for her to die there, and I was anticipating it. And sure enough, she died in the easiest contrived way you could think of for her to sacrifice herself in the lake. And I laughed out loud at that point, too. Um, so yeah, and then the saving the dog, Scrappy the dog or whatever, he made one appearance in the movie and then appeared one more time at the end for an Independence Day-like save so he could jump into the back of this pickup truck while the pickup truck was driving on top of lava. It was completely ridiculous, and I'm finding myself laughing just thinking about it. It just is completely like ripped off at the last minute from Independence Day. You can tell they just threw that in there to up the over-the-top moment for some reason. 2.5 stars, a corny, predictable storyline with a star-studded cast who do the best with what they had. Yeah, they do fantastic with what they had. The script is so horrible and a parody of itself that the actors do it justice. It's just the script itself that's like killing everything. 1.5 star. My lord, what a bad movie. Everything was on point with it. The town, the eruption, people interacting, it was okay. But when the eruption happens, it's a total wasted opportunity. Nothing makes any logical sense. For example, if the water is bubbling, you know that you're in trouble. When the boat starts to sink, you are like, how are you going to get out of this one? You don't instantly put your hand in the water or it'd be fried off. What were you thinking? Everything that has a dire consequence, yeah, like there's a scene when the characters are in a boat going across this lake of acid, and the boat is, in danger of sinking, and they don't have a paddle. So Pierce Brosnan wraps his arm and his hand in his jacket and uses that to paddle, as though, having your hand soaked in a acid-filled jacket is going to be any different than just paddling with your bare hand. It's completely laughable the way he later just discards the wet jacket off his arm and the acid doesn't burn him at all, but yet the grandmother wades into the acid just to pull them the last 10 feet to shore, and her whole lower body, the flesh, is eaten off of it. It's completely ridiculous, and I laughed out loud at this stuff. That's when I really started to laugh. And then, of course, there's this town that you're told more than once has a population of 8,000 people. They make sure they tell you this. Yet, as soon as the disaster strikes, I mean, within 30 seconds of the disaster striking, of the volcano beginning its eruption, there's enough traffic to be in downtown Seattle all of a sudden, just jammed up onto what is portrayed as Interstate 90, which leads into Seattle. But it's portrayed as some, small town along Interstate 90 at the base of a gigantic fictional mountain. And, there's 8,000 people there, and then all of a sudden, as soon as the top of the mountain blows off some smoke, all of a sudden there's like downtown Seattle traffic trying to get out of there by every means possible, and there's gridlock and all this stuff going on, and it's completely laughable. So let's move on. 2 stars, very fake, didn't enjoy it. 2 stars, I get it. Competition from the successful Twister. Unfortunately, this film delayed what its intentions was supposed to be, a disaster film. Too much middle-aged drama, and when we got to the disaster portion, there was hardly any lava scenes, which is what I was hoping for. Well, I disagree. You got your lava scene all right. You got the truck driving across the lava, characters running alongside lava flow, and you had, basically they were immune to heat. They're sitting in an old rusted pickup truck over the top of flowing lava, and not only is the truck able to drive through it somehow with the tires intact, but the characters aren't even breaking a sweat inside when they should have been cooked pretty much instantly. It is funny. But you got plenty of lava. You just don't want to accept that you got lava, I guess. Um, 3.5 stars, an entertaining blockbuster that really gives the viewers a tense build-up that works for the most part. Recommended for most people who love these types of films. I recommend it to laugh, but if you're looking for a serious disaster movie that, you're on the edge of your seat, you're feeling some tension, don't bother with this one. 1 hour of it is just setting up a ridiculous love story, what the reviewer was referring to as middle-aged drama, and it's cliched totally with, the single widower. He wants to move in on Linda Hamilton, but what's stopping him from getting what he wants? Oh, the two kids that just, pop into the scene long enough to make sure they can't actually do what they want to do. It's ridiculous. 5 stars. Having been an avid fan of this movie since its release, I was shocked to see how such a low critic score for this film. Even Volcano, which was a terrible movie with no science and no relatable story, scored higher with critics, which proves that movie critics are as overpaid as they are now. First off, this movie has a good story. Its characters are believable. The CGI is flawless. The music is perfect. About the only thing one can fault the film for is the scene with the young children driving up a mountain. Really? Okay, the CGI is flawless. I'll give it that. Even today, the CGI looks fantastic. Even in high definition, it's surprisingly good. But however, you think the only problem with this movie is the part where the kids were driving up the mountain by themselves. Okay, well, I was going to mention that. There's a scene in which, the 8-year-old kids, they're roughly about 8 or 9. The 9-year-old kid, the male kid, he is driving a truck on this mountain road, and forget about the fact that he's driving in the ash like it's snow and the vehicle has no problem. But aside from that, the kid wouldn't even be able to reach the pedals or see over the dash of this truck, but somehow he's sitting on a booster seat and not really driving because this small 9-year-old kid is driving this truck and he looks like he's sitting in it like Pierce Brosnan or somebody. It's ridiculous. So I'll just blow your flaw out of it right there. And then on top of that, you're saying that the movie Volcano, which was terrible and it had no science, this movie has no science either. This one's worse than Volcano, and I mean Volcano with Tommy Lee Jones. It was a competitor to this movie in its day, although it's more of an actual straight-up disaster movie set in Los Angeles. This one's more of a romance with a disaster tacked onto the back of it. But in any case, saying that Volcano has worse science than this, please. They're both about as scientific as the worst part of Jurassic Park, really. So I laugh at that 5-star review. 1 star. I grew tired of the movie halfway through because of the stupidity and illogical science of this film. Well, at least somebody agrees with me. There was no real science here. I mean, you had these volcanologists that were using a lot of money from somewhere, from a university or somewhere, I didn't get where they got all their funding from, to fly helicopters all around this mountain and even use a NASA robot for whatever purpose, I don't know, to try to take samples on this mountain. And really, where did all these millions of dollars come from that they were spending? To me, it looked like, not only is the budget on this movie was probably ridiculous for the CGI, but they portrayed, these volcanologists as being like, I don't know, multi-million dollar, they have millions of dollars to just waste. That was pretty ridiculous, and the science was ridiculous because they showed us computer graphics, a lot of computer monitors of the time with a lot of displays on them, and we got a lot of I don't know what you call it. Like in Star Trek, we call it like technobabble. We got a lot of technobabble about, sulfur dioxide gas and etc. But none of it was actual science. It was just science jargon to convince us that somebody knew something about this. It was ridiculous. Um, 5 stars, great movie. Watched it again after 2 decades and was pleasantly shocked it was still as great when I saw it long ago. Well, if it was a comedy, sure. 5 stars again, great movie. Never get tired of watching it. Okay, I don't believe you. 2.5 stars. We're in December of 2018 now. The late 1990s was a sort of renaissance for the disaster movie. This entry in the genre focuses on an explosive volcano thought dormant near the town of Dante's Peak, an affluent U.S. town. The film from 1997 stars Pierce Brosnan, fresh from his success in his debut James Bond film Goldeneye. Brosnan plays a volcanologist who suspects the imminent disaster about to befall the town when trees die from elevated sulfur levels in the soil, poor water quality, and burned alive bodies in a local spring. Okay, well, that's real fine synopsis there. But Brosnan, yeah, he came off of Goldeneye. Goldeneye's a great Bond film. It stands the test of time. It's got good ratings for a reason. It's one of my favorites. However, what's funny about this movie is that Brosnan kind of turns into a James Bond-like character, when we get to the final act. Now remember, he's just a volcanologist, and he's not even like the top volcanologist. He's just like a volcanologist with a boss. And suddenly he knows how to hotwire cars. He knows how to, do all these action hero type things that he needs to know how to do. But the movie doesn't tell us how he knows all this stuff. He just suddenly develops these things when he needs them in the film. Again, I don't think he coughed one time, although he's, underneath rock slides and all this stuff. Yes, he's got blood by the end, but he's able to walk away at the end, just like dusting himself off, as are most of the main characters except for Grandma. Yeah, it could be Goldeneye. It's just ridiculous. 3 stars, a less catastrophic version of Volcano, 1997. Can't believe they were released in the same year. Well, I remember when they were, and they were like marketed to compete with each other, although Volcano was actually more of your textbook disaster movie than this was. 3 stars, scientifically inaccurate but still entertaining. It's not only scientifically inaccurate, it's completely just putting shit together so that it looks like to somebody completely illiterate that there was science involved somehow. Just the way the volcano erupts, what type of volcano it is. Let me put it this way. One afternoon into evening, the volcano erupts similar to how, I don't know, Mount St. Helens would have erupted. And then by the next evening, it looks exactly how Mount St. Helens looked about 3 years later after the eruption. And all this happens within a time period of just overnight into the next day. It's completely ridiculous. And the volcano actually stops erupting and starts again when it's convenient for the plot. Literally, at one point in the movie, the whole area around the volcano in the town is, in nightfall from the ash, like it would be. And then a couple of hours later, when it's convenient to leave Grandma and have her death scene where they leave her body laying in the wilderness, it becomes sunny again and calm, and the volcano is just not a problem anymore. And then after Grandma has her death scene and we leave her there, and then the action needs to pick up again, all of a sudden the volcano erupts again and it becomes dark again, and etc. It's completely ridiculous. It's laughable, and I laughed. 2 stars. Of the 90s disaster movie boom, this is one of the weaker films. The effects do not hold up very well nowadays either. No, wrong. The effects hold up fantastically. You can tell where they used models, like for the mud flows and the bridges and, some of the vehicles that are damaged and covered with ash, but they still look great. And the actual exploding and the pyrotechnic effects of the mountain look fantastic today, so that's completely wrong. This is good CGI. This film is pretty mindless, and if you just want to see what happens when a volcano erupts, that's what you get here. Nothing really new or different and pretty empty, but it will pass the time for 90s fans on a rainy Sunday afternoon. Yeah, but unfortunately, to get to the disaster part, you actually have to watch like 55 minutes and some number of seconds of a kind of a cardboard romance. and that's really kind of pointless. That's why I say Volcano was a better disaster movie, because you didn't waste an hour of footage just on a pointless romance. 1 star. Why did everything in the 90s suck so much? Certainly Terminator 2 didn't. So, no, it's just certain things do, of course. 5 stars. A very action packed, fun movie with great acting and incredible CGI. It is a golden movie that you would love on a 90s throwback. It may not be able to reach today's standards, but for its time, it was certainly a must watch. No, it's for its time, it was a disaster financially. It was a bomb. And yeah, the CGI was fantastic, but could you imagine how mad you would be if just to see like some CGI at the end that looked great, you had to sit through a cardboard romance for 56 or 55 minutes? You would have been pretty angry, and that's why this thing bombed financially, and it bombed at the theater. It's just only non-offensive to you if you happen to catch it on Netflix, or you saw it for free somewhere. 4 stars. It's not as good as most of Bronson's work, but hey, he probably needed the money. I still watch it every time I see it that it's on. Well, I'll pause there and I'll bring up something that kind of off-put me about this. At the very beginning of the movie, not the very beginning, but the first scene on showing Brosnan as a volcanologist in his, normal workplace environment. He is doing push-ups on the floor, and I guess thinking back to his dead wife or fiance from the first shot of the movie, because he's a widower. And the funny part is he's not actually doing push-ups. He's kind of like pretending like he's doing push-ups and doing it vigorously and stressfully and forcefully, like we're supposed to be, getting some kind of emotional impact about it. But I actually laughed because he was pretending to do push-ups, and you could tell that he was. And the guy he was definitely in his 40s at the time, and even as James Bond in GoldenEye, he seemed on the edge of being too old for the role. But in this, I don't know why he's pretending to do push-ups, why he couldn't just knock out a few real ones. I mean, it's not like he had to do 50 of them to convince us. I don't know. It was just funny to me that you could obviously see he was faking the push-ups, but he did it in such a serious way while he was faking them. It was like laughable, and it was right at the beginning of the movie. It should have been a warning of what was to come, I guess. 5 stars. We're in December of 2017 reviews now. Dante's Peak is my favorite Pierce Brosnan movie. Well, it could be, I guess. But no, I would say GoldenEye is far better. 5 stars. One of my favorite films ever. Great acting, story, casting, music, and the special effects are jaw-dropping. Best disaster film ever made, and probably the most scientifically accurate, which is saying a lot. Well, I don't know who wrote this. Was it an 8-year-old? I don't know what version of scientifically accurate you're talking about here. This is laughable. 3.5 stars. Another solid disaster picture. Follows the typical beats and characters a movie like this usually does, but it does it nicely. Well, I'll disagree. It follows the beats, the cliched, well-worn beats of a disaster movie, but it does it rather poorly and boringly at the first hour. Continuing. Brosnan is really likable in it, and as is his relationship with Hamilton. It's a cardboard relationship, and he's not really playing a character that's he's just playing himself in this, and he's trying to like endear himself to Hamilton's kids in a cardboard type way. Again, we've seen this so many times. It's just like they're cardboard characters having a cardboard romance with cardboard kids. 5 stars. I happen to adore this movie. I love disaster flicks in general, and volcano ones are awesome in my opinion. I tend to revert to this one when I want a good disaster. I disagree. Go watch Volcano instead. 5 stars. Great movie full of action. 4 stars. Remembering the devastation unleashed by the eruption of Mount St. Helens, I found this movie compelling and largely believable. Yeah, they stole a lot of things from the eruption of St. Helens, including the setting. They used Interstate 90. They even used what looked like a model of St. Helens when they showed what the volcano ended up looking like in the end. They showed the mud flows and etc., and you could tell they modeled it after the mud flows that were shown on TV when St. Helens erupted. But otherwise, I mean, if you just want to watch Mount St. Helens erupt, there's plenty of old video to watch, and you can go visit the visitor center and they show the video there too. But that's not a reason to give this 4 stars. I laughed, but I didn't laugh that much. 1.5 stars. A dumb waste of time that has bad acting and makes no sense. I don't think the acting was bad. All the characters did what the script told them to do, but the script was bad. I'll say the script was bad. 3.5 stars. Likely to be the most ridiculous of the late 90s disaster movies, and next to Armageddon, that's a real achievement. Dante's Peak does succeed at producing likable leads and truly guilty pleasure-worthy status, but other than that, the vast amount of cliche is nothing to be proud of. But do we really care? Verdict B-. Well, I think you should have mentioned there that you laughed at the grandmother sacrificing herself in the acid. I laughed out loud at that, and for that I might give it a B-, but not for the stuff you're saying here. 3.5 stars. Saw it in 9th grade and it was fun. Oh yeah, if you're a 9th grader and you're a typical 9th grader, not like a heavy science nerd 9th grader, this is going to come across fine to you because you're not going to realize how implausible and stupid it all is. But if you're 30, 40 or more and you've seen these disaster movies since the 70s, then this just like hits all the same beats but does it really badly. 2.5 stars. We're now in August of 2016 on the reviews. The brainer of the two volcano movies, the brainier of the two volcano movies of 1997. I thought it was okay, nothing special though. Strange that after 20 years, Rotten Tomatoes has failed to acquire a critical consensus on this movie. No, there's a critical consensus. Well, 2016, maybe there wasn't, but there is now. Definitely, it's rotten. Trust me on this. 3 stars. No matter how many times I see this film, it's a remedy for sleeplessness, and not because of the subject matter as much as the attempted plot with questionable acting. Yeah, the cardboard romance would put you to sleep. 5 stars. Great, exciting adventure movie. 5 stars. I advise anyone who doesn't like this movie, the best volcano movie ever made, to rewatch it as a 13-year-old kid. That's tough to do, but if you can pull that off. 3.5 stars. This is one of the better disaster films out there. It is nice because it isn't on a large worldwide scale, but focuses on a small town laying next to a long dormant volcano, just named second most desirable place to live in America. And a volcano expert discovers a volcano may be waking up. The script is very well written, and both Hamilton and Brosnan turn in great performances. The action is good, and the visuals are great. Underrated film. Wrong, wrong, and wrong again. The script is crap. It's a parody of itself. There's no standout performances here. Not at all. Not in any way. Everybody's a cardboard character. Yeah, they spend a lot of wasted footage telling you about how great this 8,000 population town is, although the town looks like more like a 30,000 population town, judging by the freeway entrances and everything. That's the other unbelievable parts of it. But yeah, there's a lot of a whole hour wasted of just trying to convince you of this cardboard romance and to tell you also that the grandmother-in-law is unlikable, so she needs to die. 4 stars, an underrated disaster movie. It really works despite using the Jaws blueprint. Does it use the Jaws blueprint? I mean, it's pretty much pulling every cliche from every disaster movie there is. And yeah, Jaws, I see what you're saying. Yes, Pierce Brosnan, it wants to warn everybody, but his, boss, his antagonist boss comes in and wants to stop him from warning everybody. But it's not really like Jaws because a volcanologist knows what volcanoes do. Volcanoes don't have personalities that scar you and you're thinking they're out to get you. So it doesn't have the Jaws vibe to it. But yeah, his character is kind of like portrayed as like overly eager to warn everybody. That's similar to Jaws, I guess. 4.5 stars. Wow. It does a decent job of tightening the suspense for the first hour. I know disaster movies don't review very well, but if you just accept what is going on, in what is going in and cast unnecessarily high expectations aside, you can have a good time. That's the case here. No, the tension doesn't ramp up. You could have done all that in 20 minutes, not 56 minutes, so I disagree. 4.5 stars again. I was surprised how much I liked it. A lot of popcorn fun. Well, I was surprised how much I laughed at it, but it took like a whole hour to get to that point. 3 stars. Meh, the film is good. Boring at parts. The grandmother was mostly annoying. I did like the eruption scenes and the earthquake, which was pretty cool. I thought it would be just a little bit better, but it's better than Volcano. Pierce Brosnan, that's about it. 3 stars, 65%. Again, I can probably call this one. I've spent enough time on it. But I encourage people to watch this to laugh at how bad it gets in the last act. But you can pretty much fast forward to from a lot of the first hour. Watch just enough to see the town, skip through about 40 minutes on fast forward, and then enjoy the final act and laugh your ass off after a couple of beers because it's funny in that regard. So I say these rotten scores are completely justified. But the CGI holds up fantastically well. I'm guessing that's where most of the budget went. So anyway, I will see you on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.